Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. We're so grateful that you're here with us. If you're celebrating Thanksgiving this week, we're very much going to be appreciating you this week and thanking you for being in our lives. And we are super grateful today because we have another beautiful guest to share with you today, don't we, Laurel?
We do. I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, so this is a somebody that you've connected with. So tell our listeners a little bit about your connection here, and then we'll pass it over to Terri to introduce herself. Mhm.
Sure. So, Terri Hamilton, Terri and I are members in a women entrepreneur community in New Hampshire, and we both live in New Hampshire. And we are both coaches. And I knew that Terri would be a wonderful guest on our podcast. She brings mindfulness, meditation, and coaching work in kind of the same way that we do to the world. So, with that, I'll love to introduce Terri Hamilton to our listeners. And Terri, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Welcome, Terri.
Sure. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction to both of you. I'm really excited to be here. I call myself a mindfulness and positive mindset coach. I originally started as an elementary school teacher, and then I decided to go back to school and get my master's degree in counseling, but decided that I didn't want to do trauma work, so that I would become a guidance counselor at a school, which I absolutely loved. And I did that for 3 years and decided I did not have enough time to be with the parents, the teachers, or the children. So that's when I had the brainstorm of starting a business. And I called it a parent connection, for that connection between children and their parents, which I think is so incredibly powerful. And during my journey, I found mindfulness and its positive impact on children of all ages and adults also. And as I continued to learn, I added positive mindset, because I truly believe that our brains can make good choices. And when we pause and take the time, miraculous things happen.
Now,
That's so beautiful.
Laurel, now you know why I thought that being in this
Yeah.
space with the two of you was going to be such a
Yeah.
treat for me and our listeners.
I know. We haven't talked a lot about mindfulness. We had one episode where I had a guest from one of our beautiful organizations here in Richmond, Virginia, and she talked a little bit about mindfulness. And I feel like it's a topic that we probably should try to make an effort to bring in a little bit more, Laurel, because it's so potent. And today's topic for our listeners, let's introduce it officially, and then we'll kind of get into some peripheral things as well. Is healthy relationship, healthy boundaries, healthy relationships. And we thought that this week of Thanksgiving in particular, I know a lot of people struggle, coming back into maybe connection with family that they're not used to or necessarily don't have the best relationships with. And I know, for me, my family of origin and the work of setting new boundaries is really a challenging place to be, but it also makes all the difference in the world in terms of being able to show up more authentically and feel more comfortable and really enjoy, experiences with family. So I felt like today would be a great day for us to maybe help our listeners a little bit with some tips and some ideas about ways to make some small changes around boundaries with family, with friends, and use mindfulness. I think is one of the best tips to begin with, right? Yeah, that pause is huge, right?
It is huge. And one of the things I think about often is, this time of Thanksgiving being with our families, with ourselves, and you talk about new boundaries, but I often think maybe our boundaries should be allowed to shift and change as much as we're allowed to shift and change, right, through our lifetime. We're different. Every year at Thanksgiving, I'm a new version of myself, right? And so how can we maintain healthy relationships within our own integrity, or with our integrity in mind? And maybe that's through mindfulness.
I would love to say that mindfulness can be a huge, huge benefit to all involved, because being mindful is really being aware in the moment. And if you just take a couple of breaths, perhaps before you walk into the home that you're going to, or a couple of breaths before your guests start to arrive, and you imagine that it's going to be a beautiful day. It's a day of Thanksgiving, a day of gratitude. So if you put that in the forefront of your brain, that that's what you're expecting, it's much more possible that that is what you're going to see and receive. So really, mindfulness is so simple, not always easy, but really simple, by just saying, okay, here I am, I'm grounded, feet on the floor, take a couple of cleansing breaths and enjoy what's coming into your home or wherever you're going. Bring that joy with you.
I love that, Terry, about and that positive mindset, that idea of setting in your mind, right? You deciding in your mind that you want it to be a day of gratitude, that you want to make it a beautiful experience, and that you will do what you can to set that tone, right? That's so, because oftentimes if we're worried about what's going to happen, or we're worried about how we're going to react, like that's the mindset we go into with, right? Rather than the mindset you just described. So that in and of itself is a really potent tip and change that we can bring in.
And it applies no matter what day it is. I mean, we're talking about, being with family and holidays and maybe Thanksgiving. And I had an experience not that long ago where I was going to an event. It was a networking event. I was going in what I wanted to be a professional capacity. And Laurel knows the story already. But
Mm.
I was invited as a guest of my husband's company. And I struggled for a couple days of, in what relationship am I showing up? What capacity am I showing up? How do I maintain who I want to be, how I want to show up, while my husband is there, a very different relationship than the professional capacity that I felt I wanted to be present in. And once I decided who I was going to show up as and why, and I expressed those, my expectations and my boundaries and my needs to all involved, I was able to show up in that way. And it was just a beautiful evening. But it wouldn't have been if I wasn't mindful of kind of the dilemma I was facing and and decisive on how I wanted to show up and the kind of experience I wanted to have. So this applies. This topic with healthy relationships and healthy boundaries. It's a everyday occurrence in my life.
I love that, Laurel. It truly is. It can be used in so many situations. One of the things that I often tell my clients is, when you notice something that affects you in a way that is disconcerting, or you see someone saying something or hear them saying something that jars you a little bit, a great way to handle that is to say to yourself, "That's interesting. I wonder why. That's interesting." It takes that and puts a softening agent between the two of you. It's a buffer, that it's not about
Yeah.
me, it's about whatever is going on in that person's life. And I consider that a really healthy boundary, is that I can look at them and say, I have no idea what's going on in their lives and what is being thought of at the time, but not to engage with it. When you pause and you say, that's interesting, it really does shift your awareness over to them. And so you don't become visceral in your response.
Yeah, yeah. Or you can begin to manage the visceral response that might have like been reacted, come up immediately. And we just did an episode talking about the four agreements, right? One of the agreements is don't take anything personally. And I feel like that's such a powerful agreement, because just for the reason that you're talking about, to be able to have that response where you're feeling like, all of your cells are now vibrating or whatever. And then to be able to just sit quietly, take a breath and say, well, it's not about me, it's about them. Right.
Mm.
Isn't that interesting? I wonder how they got there. I wonder why they think that. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I love the combination,
Beautiful.
Terry, of the words the interesting
Yeah.
and the wonder, right? And I talk
Yeah.
with clients about this a lot is,
Yeah.
can you imagine being curious every step of the way and how that wonder does change things for you? Um,
Yeah.
so it's so good.
Wow. I mean, if we just go in with that tip, right, as like that's the thing that I'm going to do throughout my whole afternoon or evening or whatever, that could save the day for everybody.
Absolutely. You could send out a memo.
That's right. That's right.
You
That's so
know,
great.
it reminds me. For a couple of years, I worked in government relations, and I had to observe. I had to go and attend legislative hearings, and the way that I stayed calm, no matter what policy and decisions they were talking about, I would go into hearings with a mindset that I was a sociology major, watching humans interact, and it neutralized all of my opinions and my reaction. And it was that same thing of, hmm, this is interesting. Look at how these humans are interacting.
Such a
So,
healthy boundary. Such a healthy boundary, right?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
okay,
Yes.
okay, enough about
So,
that.
yeah, well, I want to, Terry, I know that some of the work that you do focuses on, people that are feeling overwhelmed with life or feeling like there's just too much going on. And I feel like this idea of healthy boundaries, healthy relationships, we could probably say healthy boundaries, healthy relationships, healthy life, all like are connected, right? And so another way to begin to think about boundaries too is like the boundaries that you have in your own life so that you aren't showing up overwhelmed, exhausted, distraught, or because there's been so much going on or too much to do, right? So, can you tell us a little bit about some of the strategies maybe that you use with people or some suggestions that you make around that that might help our listeners a little bit?
Absolutely. One of the things that is very easy and doesn't take much time when you are feeling overwhelmed is to step out into nature. And it doesn't have to be for any length of time, even a minute. When you get outside and you are literally grounded on the ground, it changes the way you breathe, it changes the cells in your body, and you can take in a couple of nice deep breaths. You can look at the beautiful colors. You can take a moment to listen to the sounds. And just really what you're doing is becoming present and aware. And when you do that, your nervous system calms down. And so if you're having a frenzied day for any reason, is just to take those couple of steps. And people will say, well, I don't have time. It's not a length of time, it's just actually doing it. So if you only have a minute, that minute is well worthwhile to go out and become grounded and just really become aware of the sensations in your body and allow that calm to come over you.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. I was thinking, Terry, when you said that before you go on to something else, was the idea of, we do sometimes think, oh, I don't even have time to walk outdoors. I'm in such a hurry. Or I have so much to do in this moment. But I think that's a story we tell ourselves, don't you? I mean, we all can make a 30-second detour outside or 2-minute detour outside if we really want to.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, it
Mhm.
really saves us lots of time because when our brains are frenzied, we're not focusing and we're not clear-headed, so we're really not making progress on whatever it is that we're trying to do. So when you have that moment or that minute or those 2 minutes to just clear your head, then that is really helpful. If you absolutely can't get outside, if you're in a place where you can't, if you just close your eyes and imagine nature,
Mhm.
you get a similar effect. That's why you see pictures of nature everywhere, like in doctors' offices, you see nature and plants and those types of things because nature nurtures. And so even imagining that you're in that space, if you can't actually physically get out, which I think normally we can, but if, say, you're in a car ride and you just, you want to focus on something that's of nature. So that's really, and breathing. I mean, the absolute thing that you always have with you is your breathing. And so put your hand on your chest and just notice. And as you start to notice and you take a deeper breath, it absolutely, you can feel your body relax.
Yeah. And, I love that. When I was first trying to remember mindful breathing and to use my breath to help me self-soothe and let go and not be caught up in the whirl of my endless mind chatter. I actually had like a sticky note, that said breathe, and I had it around the house. I put it in multiple places at the beginning to remind me. I had it in my car dashboard. Um, Somebody at where I was working at the time actually gave me a rock that had breathe carved into it because they knew I talked about it so much, But yeah, right. I know. Terry holds up a rock that says breathe. Yeah. But we all, if it's hard to remember these things, what are the prompts that help us, right? And so we, at the beginning, sometimes it is hard to change these habits, but we can find these little techniques that help us support the kind of change that we want. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you laugh because I did hold up a smooth stone that says breathe on it. And I refer to this as a calming stone. So for a
Mm.
listener, if you take any smooth rock and you put it between your thumb and your fingers and you rub it, it's actually sending signals to your brain to calm down. And so it could be a smooth rock from the ocean. It could be one that you got at a craft fair. Whatever is smooth and causes you to have that motion. There's acupressure points at the tips of your fingers, and your body, without even knowing it, starts to calm down. So, yeah, I'm a firm believer in calming stones too.
Beautiful. Find a little smooth stone, put it in your pocket, take it with you, bring it to the table. That's great.
It's such a nice reminder that there are so many tools that we have access to help us calm, right? To remind us. And I had a conversation with a client recently who, lives in a major city in the US and doesn't have access to nature the way that I do in New Hampshire. And my suggestion to her was, if physically you can't be in nature, you know, listen to birds singing on an app, right? Find the noise of ocean sounds or a running stream, something that pulls you back into nature. Because I do think our bodies are wired, even if we can't physically be in nature. When we hear the sounds or I sometimes coach on what I call aromatherapy, right? It's if it is the smell of chocolate chip cookies that calms you, or if it's the flowers that your grandmother used to have. Strawberries is another one, that strawberries kind of bring up this sense of peace and calm for some people. Like, bring that scent into your home. Even if it's artificial, it helps your body to calm down. And so I love that you talked about that with the stone, Terry. It's really nice.
And Thanksgiving is such a wonderful time to really enjoy those aromas, right? There's so many awesome ones. So if you're struggling, you can just concentrate on the smell. Like, just concentrate
That's
on
great.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Terry, people that are, in families where there's, struggle with teenage stuff going on. I know you do a lot of work in that area. Any ideas and thoughts for some parents, around setting healthy boundaries, develop, really working to promote healthy relationships in that kind of way?
I think my number one word for relationships with parents and children is respect. And so when you show your children respect, no matter what age they are, it's what you're expecting to get back. And very often, parents are talking, what I say, down to the children because they feel like they are the authority and that they need to teach them these lessons. But I think the best lesson is when you actually, depending on the size of the child, you get down to their level and you're speaking to them with a calm voice because that's what you want from them. So if you want that, you give that. And the same with teenagers. If you talk to them about boundaries and respect, you're more likely to get that back. And that was a rule in my home, was that you can tell me anything, but you need to do it respectfully. And I was fortunate to have two boys that grew up and have been always very respectful. We don't agree on everything. Parents and children have different viewpoints. That's what makes us different. But as long as we can be respectful and really know that they are looking at life from a different perspective than we are. And so once again, we can say, well, that's interesting. I wonder why. And not necessarily address something in the middle of a family dinner, right? Let's enjoy the time that we have together as a family. And if something is really bothering us, to take that as a private conversation.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like one of the things too that I found helpful when my kids were growing up too was this idea of if I was going to start doing things differently than I had been before, is even just talking about that ahead of time. And I guess that's really a sign of respect too, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, right? This is
Mhm.
this is the way I've done it, and this is the way I'm changing. I just want you to be aware. So then we bring that awareness, which comes back to mindfulness, right? We're making
Right.
everybody aware of what's going on in the present, not the way it was done before, but the way we're going to do it from now. And to get their feedback. It doesn't mean that you're going to do it their way. It just you get a feel for, oh, they might think that's a fabulous idea, or they may have something in addition to add that will be very useful to you. So I really think it's respect and open communication.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too because I always found the kids had usually pretty good ideas about how to make things work better if the conversation was about that, right? Yeah, and we opened it up to them too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to be heard. It doesn't matter how old we are, right? We want to be heard.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean everybody's going to agree with us, but just being a witness to that and allowing their voice is really an important part. And once again, what I consider very respectful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you combine that with the not taking anything personally, right? That, one of the four agreements, oftentimes as a parent, I've been known to do this. You know, I may say in my mind, oh, that's interesting. I wonder. And sometimes the wonder is, what did I do wrong? Right? And so, that when I think, especially as a parent or in any relationship, it could be my relationship as a wife, as a sister, as a daughter, whenever I take things, bring that wonder into my own needs, it distorts, I think, my perspective and the respect that I bring into the situation, like the respect for the other person. So I love this conversation about bringing that wonder and learning from those relationships that you are in a way that we all grow from that curiosity.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
What I've learned along the way is I have a mug over here that says enjoy the journey. And I really, really try to do that no matter what the situation is to figure out what in this piece is what am I learning, right? What am I learning when things feel stressful? And how can I really enjoy the people that I'm around, whether that's my family, whether that's my friends, whether those are colleagues? How can I really take it all in? As you said, not take it personally if someone doesn't agree with me, because that's what makes the world go round, right? We have all these different opinions, we have all these different places we've come from, but when we can bring it together in a circle of respect, I think it's amazing. think it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's great. I was just thinking about, as I was listening to both of you talk about this topic, was, because oftentimes, I know in families, there's repeated patterns that we get stuck in and we do them over and over again and we can't seem to get out. And I think just bringing that curiosity of how did we get in this pattern or how did we get in the habit of ending up here allows us to like look at like it was a collective experience that we got here, right? Oftentimes we're just mad at the kids or we're mad at, like, and instead, like, how did we get here brings that again sense of wonder. It's a pause. It's a not taking it personally. We all had a part in all of this, and just to dissect how did we get here, and to even, if the kids are old enough or you can do it well, is to even introduce that conversation because it gives them an opportunity to think about that and look at both sides, right? What did I do? What did you do? How did we get here together? Right? Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's so powerful what you just said, Laurel, is to get them involved. Is to say, like, I don't like where we're at right now. How
Right.
about you? Because they probably don't like it either. So how
Mhm.
can we look at this from a different perspective, and how can we change together, right? To have
Mm.
each other's input. And that I would believe in any relationship with people that we really cherish is let's figure this out together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think that so Terry, I want to come back to um, a lot of times, people are dealing with anger, situations where people are really angry. And I feel like that's sometimes one of the hardest things to encounter. Any tips on, how to work with that in a good boundary kind of way, if we encounter that with somebody else, or, it might not be appropriate to do it at like a Thanksgiving dinner table, but to like, to help kind of get out of that pattern with somebody, right? Yeah, to begin to work towards that.
One of the things that I find incredibly helpful, especially if someone is continually angry, is to journal, is to write down what it is that you are so angry about. Because when you start to put it into writing, number one, it's a flow of energy that's going onto the page. And then you can actually look at it and say, oh, is this really what I'm angry at? Because many times we get triggered by maybe a certain word or a certain phrase or a person or a something. And that's not really what we're upset about. There's really something underlying there. So if that person is willing to do that, and it sometimes it's just a few sentences, like I'm really upset because, and then if you let that flow of consciousness go, if at the moment, someone is really angry, once again, is like just removing yourself from that situation and saying, okay, we're going to be together for a few hours. What can I do to make the most of this be rememberable in a good way? Right. And
Mhm.
we only have control over ourselves and what we're going to do, and control over how we react to others. So we can't stop somebody from being angry, but if there are children, we can help give them some tools. If they're a friend, in the moment it's kind of hard, but sometimes just diffusing the situation by asking them to go take a walk outside for a few minutes, right? Once again, like getting
Mhm.
them out of that immediate um, response of I'm angry about this, because as you said, it could be a habit from a long time ago, and
Yeah.
what truly is the issue underneath. And very often it's fear of something. Anger is
Mhm.
usually got
Yeah.
fear underneath it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it's appropriate, like, let's say it's been a habit for a long time when you're together that you end up mad at one another or whatever, that if you use your mindset technique and just like say before you go in, I'm not going to be in an argument with so and so today. If they're angry at me, I'm just going to say, well, I don't know. Look, I don't want to be angry with each other today. Let's just enjoy the day as best we can. Or like to have your mindset of how you're going to handle it ahead of time.
Absolutely. I think that's incredibly powerful. It's like, I'm
Mhm.
going to enjoy the day. This is what I want. And I don't have to engage with somebody that's angry. And
Mhm.
you can go in and you can actually say, I'm really excited to be here, right? I'm really happy to see you. You just set the groundwork. You've done it in your mind, and then you bring that energy into the room. If you go in with intrepidation, people feel that energy. Like, we feel each other's energy. So if you go in with like, I am really happy to see you, and see where that goes. It's hard to be around happy people and be angry, right?
Or it ticks off your anger even more. Right? Like, I want to be angry. I'm not angry. I mean, I want to be happy and I'm not happy.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what came to mind for me when Terry, when you said that. It's hard to be angry when you're around happy people. But so many people enter into a situation the opposite, saying it's hard to be happy when I'm around angry people. So I love just that flip. Oh,
Yeah.
flip. What's so hard about being happy? Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Okay, Laurel, any other questions for Terri before we wrap up today? What else is coming up for you as we kind of let our
I guess
listeners?
I think just the one, I love the conversation about the respect, and with teenagers in particular, or children regardless of the age, right? But what suggestions might you have for our listeners who are having a hard time with the, I'll say, transition into the next phase of a relationship, right? So often as parents, we see ourselves as whether it's the authority or the expert or the guardian. And and whatever tips you might have for our listeners on how do you transition gracefully into whatever that next phase of relationship is with your children.
I have a couple of thoughts. One thought is to be the sounding board for our children, to let them know that we're here to listen. We're not here to fix. We're not here to solve their problems, but we're here to be a sounding board. And that when we give them that grace, they're much more likely to tell us what's on their minds. The other piece that I think is really important is doing things with your grown children that you both love to do together, because that brings together a common ground. So if you both love to go to the movies, or you both love to go shopping, or you both love to read books, or you both love to go fishing, whatever it is, bringing yourselves together in something you absolutely love is going to automatically open up the neural pathways in your brain to bring on communication. And it's going to be likely respectable, right? Respectful and respectable because you're doing something that you enjoy doing together. So I think that, as opposed to like, I'm the mom and I'm down here, I'm looking down on you and trying to help you, it's kind of leveling off. It's like, okay, we're not peers, but we can be friends. And we don't always have to agree on everything, but I am here for you. As a mom, I think when you're a mom, at least in my experience, I always want to be there for my children. Does it mean I can resolve their problems? No, but I certainly can listen.
I love those, and both of those I have found in my own parenting experience. When my children, I have two girls, they're 2 years apart, when they were in college, you know, each of them, I learned really quickly to ask the question, do you need me to listen or do you need me to fix this, right? Am I a solution finder or am I a listener? And when I started asking that question, they would tell me exactly what they needed. It didn't put me in a position where I was misinterpreting their needs. Um, and then on the other side, the doing things that you both enjoy. I've done that many, many years with my children. Um, my husband, who is my daughter's stepfather, when my girls were middle school, he's a man who grew up with no sisters. And so he was a little frightened or panicked, as some men are, about having teenage daughters. And I told him, you need to find two things that you have in common with each of them and actively participate in those things. And it changed his relationship with them. And more importantly, it changed their relationship with him. And so I love this conversation. We could probably talk all day about this,
I
but
know.
It's
I
you know,
know. I know.
yeah,
beautiful,
Yeah.
Laurel. I love
so
that.
good, so
Yeah, that
good.
was great. I was thinking too, as I was listening to both of you, was, for many of us who might feel overwhelmed or there's too much to do all the time, is to like take some time, with yourself to really sit down with your journal and think about, where are the places that you could start to move out of doing and become more of a sounding board, become more of just a good listener, right? And less active. Because I think a lot of us, as women, right, we get our feelings of self-esteem or worthiness from doing for others or solving problems, and at some point that kind of runs its course. If you're a good parent, right, you're not supposed to be doing that anymore. The kids are supposed to solve their own problems. And so, how do you start to transition out of that? And that's a great way for that would be a great exercise for anyone who's feeling like overwhelmed, right? And just sit down and start to think about, where can you think about doing things differently instead of showing up as the doer, as the fixer, as the whatever. How can you become skilled in just being present, being a listener, being mindful, helping others take a breath. Yeah.
I love that. Love that.
Me too. I just love that. And instead of being a human doing,
Yeah.
we're human beings.
Yes, 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 yes. We have a nice little meditation on that we put out in September. Yes,
Ooh,
so go back and visit that one. That's a really good one.
I would definitely do that.
Terry, we can't thank you enough for taking some time with us today and sharing some of your wisdom with our listeners, and hopefully helping people get through the holidays with feeling a little more healthy and a little more wise, and some good ideas to go in and show up a little differently maybe this year. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It has been my pleasure speaking with both of you, and I wish you an amazing Thanksgiving full with love and joy and gratitude.
Thank you, Terry.
you too. And just more note, Laurel, to our listeners, if they want to know how to reach Terri, how to find
Yes,
Terri, check the show notes. We'll have some information about how to follow her in all her good work.
absolutely. Yes. Okay, everybody, off we go. Thanks for being with us today. Happy holidays if you're celebrating this week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thanks, Terri.
Thank you.